David Khorshid of XState fame and Stately AI made a wonderful demo of a video player that goes full screen and plays the video once clicked, returning to a mini size once done or when the escape key is pressed. This version is defined by a state machine. But in this video, we'll see an alternate implementation based on the Omnibus library, in particular its services interface, which provides a structured set of conventions around bus triggering. In this setup, CSS will change the video player from mini to full if we set its data state property. Now let's get into how we define an instance of the service. Well, we call this create player service function, and we'll pass in the video element to be animated and a transition time, which will come into play later. And we get back a function that we may invoke like this to ask the service to do some work. Now, we haven't defined what this service is yet, so we'll say the create player service calls create service from the Omnibus library, prefix player, bus, and basically a null effect. So what we'll see here is that now upon playing this, invoking that player service function, we get a series of actions. But let's replace this with a real effect, a time delay of 4,000 milliseconds using the after utility. And we'll see that it starts, it waits 4,000 milliseconds, and then it emits and completes. So fake services are very nice for getting this down. But in order to make our state change whenever our service is active, we're going to subscribe to the isActive property of the service. This is an observable and lets us just basically change that state according to the isActive Boolean emitted on that observable. There it's full, and now it's going to go back to mini. All right, so that is a fake time delay service, and let's do cancellation so that we can see what happens if we hit the escape key sooner. The way we do that is by putting a cancel action from the player service on the bus, and now when we do that, the escape key will cancel the after observable even if it's in flight. Cool. So let's get real about this. First, let's set ourselves up for success by defining our observable as play until end, and we'll return play until end. But let's make it a new observable. What this is like an unresolved promise. So when we return that and we hit play, it'll basically sit open forever until we hit escape, which we just did. Now, an observable can define a process that moves forward and then resets. So to set the process up for success, we will play it upon beginning and pause it upon cancellation. The return function is your cancellation function. So now when we invoke the service, it plays all the way through, then we hit escape key and it's gone. We hit play and interrupt it, and it pauses at the 1 second mark. So our observable does some work and then undoes it to leave us cleanly separated. Next, we want to be able to turn this video off when we have hit the end. So in order to do that, we're going to call complete on some object. And the object is going to be the first argument to the observable constructor. Now, that mark complete function, which marks our observable as complete, can be called on the ended event of the video element. In addition, if we set up a listener in the first part of the observable, we should remove it at the end. Save that. Now we see a player that begins to play. When it hits the end, it no longer becomes active, that process, which is what shrinks it back down to full screen. Our finishing touch here is just simply going to be to use the after utility once again to make sure that we only begin playing after the CSS transition. One last thing. We wouldn't want to tell the video to play if it was already playing. Omnibus lets us limit this player to a single process with the blocking concurrency strategy. These strategies, built on RxJS operators, let us set our concurrency to 1 simply by changing the code from create service to create blocking service. And we're done. Now we have all the behavior of the XState version, but expressed as a single cancelable process triggered by events. That's the Omnibus way.